CHASM project started in response to the Selsey fishermen's questions about why there are so few crabs and lobsters and why there is so much sediment. Behind me we have the coast of West Sussex. Underwater we have a number of reefs and rocky outcrops, and these have been the traditional fishing grounds for the Selsey fishing industry. They have fished here for many centuries because it has always been a productive and, thanks to them, a well-managed resource. However, changes in the fishing grounds have been seen in more recent years. Local fishermen feel there has been more change out here over the last 10 years than there has been in the last century, which is quite something.
I noticed the change probably 80s, late 80s, early 90s. Crab fishing, lobster fishing has gone from a very lucrative business to a business now which has declined dramatically in the last 10 years. I used to notice that there's what I would term a bloom in the water. You could see there was marine growth. The sea was alive. It was just, it's like the heartbeat of the sea. You just saw it there. You knew that it was alive with fish in the sea, whether it's planktonic or not. But this last, between 5 and 10 years, I noticed it's just become clearer, a lot clearer. And I'm just thinking, well, if the bloom isn't there, that's next year's growth. Where's it going? Why isn't it growing? Another thing is sediment build-up that has come from we don't know where, and that hasn't done the marine environment any good, because certain areas which had certain ecosystems around them where specific fish lived, they don't live there anymore. The biggest worry is that there's lack of immature fish to what they used to be. You very rarely see the small ones now. Same with the lobsters. It's those which are our wages in a few years' time. If we don't see them now, we've got nothing to look forward to in a few years' time because they're slow growing, and that is the worrying trend.
Working to examine the issues is needed to understand what has happened and whether mitigation measures are actually possible. This is where CHASM comes in. CHASM is an informal partnership of fishermen, local organisations and universities who are looking at the issues and trying to get a better idea about what is actually happening here.
The coast is a really dynamic place. It's constantly changing, both under natural forces like the waves and the tides, but also under human influences like coastal management and, of course, climate change. As the interface between the land and the sea, they're very complex, and one of the challenges of the CHASM project has been trying to understand the history of change that's happened around Selsey and how that might have influenced crab and lobster stocks as well. So what we've done is we've looked at the existing coastal monitoring data that's been collected by the Channel Coastal Observatory through the South East Regional Coastal Monitoring Programme. And we're trying to understand the changes in the sediment volume on the beach, the changes in the depth of the seabed, and also changes in the wave and tide climates that have happened over the last 20 years or so. During that period, there's been water quality data that's been collected by the universities of Brighton and Southampton, plus observations from the fishermen, from divers, and from other coastal users about what's been changing. That gives us a timeline of change, both through monitoring and through observation. But there's a lot more work that we need to do to fully understand how that change relates to the changes in crustacean stocks and the fishing grounds here at Selsey Bill.
The dive teams from the local area have been here out in Bracklesham Bay, down at the seabed, collecting sediment for us. This sediment has then been taken back to the universities of Southampton and Brighton, where we've conducted analysis to understand and be able to map what is underneath the seabed here. The fine sediments are particularly important because with waves and with currents and bad weather, they're transported around the system and into the system too. Particular minerals and chemicals bind to these sediments and then can be ingested by the flora and fauna such as the lobsters. As part of our monitoring, we use these specialist pieces of equipment called sondes to collect real-time data continually on 15-minute cycles. We've deployed them for almost 10 years now in the intertidal areas, so here at Medmery and round the corner at Pagham, so we have long-term data from there. And more recently we've deployed it within Bracklesham Bay itself and up in Chichester Harbour. This helps us understand the cycles of movement of these suspended sediment, and also it gives us a chance to spot extremes. We've also been looking at the lobsters and analysing the lobsters for exactly the same elements to see whether we have correlations between what we're finding in the sediments and in the water column and what we find within the lobsters. So in the future we want to expand on what we've already been doing. We're hoping to gather past data from the satellite imagery that's been collected and correlate that with what we have now, so that we can actually understand historically whether there have been plumes of sediment which may have impacted on the ecosystem in the water here. The divers are going to be going back out, taking cores, so that we see what sediment there was on the seabed going back in history, and again correlating this with the data that we're collecting now, but also the satellite imagery that we're going to be looking at.